The story begins in the future, specifically on August 17, 2035, in the capital of South Korea, Seoul. It had already been 5 years since the Great Catastrophe struck humanity on August 17, 2030. This calamity was triggered by the appearance of portals that released monsters all over the world, appearing everywhere. Since then, humanity had become prey to these creatures, suffering a severe decline due to their relentless invasions. The protagonist, Choi Jun-hyuk, was sitting on top of a building waiting for a specific event to occur. He reflected on the state of the world and the survival prospects of the remaining 40% of humanity still alive. Suddenly, he felt an unusual movement behind him and turned to investigate. He saw several monsters below the building where he was. After counting, he identified 6 Class C monsters of mid to high level and 1 Class A monster. It was exactly as his older brother, Ji Chaol, had described. Jun used his binoculars to closely observe the area, knowing that the event he had been waiting for was about to happen. Everything Ji Chaol had said was about to come true. Suddenly, a wave of energy surged, forming something strange, which Jun monitored closely. He realized that this energy was due to the formation of what is known as a sudden portal. He was right. Within seconds, a massive dimensional portal materialized. He was intrigued by rumors that people could emerge from these portals, although it seemed highly unlikely based on its appearance. Contrary to his expectations, human hands and feet emerged from the portal. A person jumped out, struggling to escape and eventually succeeding. After calming down, the individual took a deep breath and stood up. He was euphoric to have returned and began to scream in celebration, relieved to have finally escaped the dimension in which he had been trapped because of the portal. However, his happiness was short-lived as the Class C monsters Jun had seen earlier, along with the Class A monster, noticed the human presence and advanced to devour him. Realizing the danger, the person cursed his bad luck, lamenting that he couldn't even have 5 minutes of peace. "What keeps attracting these creatures to me? Will they ever stop chasing me?" he grumbled. Jun, on the other hand, was thrilled to see this individual, recognizing that this was the moment he had been waiting for all morning. The monsters began their ruthless assault on the man who had emerged from the portal. Jun watched with pleasure, refraining from stepping in to help. He knew the man didn't need assistance and watched as he defeated many of them on his own. The man used his unique technique, Sword Cradle, to eliminate the remaining monsters. This technique was highly effective, even though the situation would typically require at least 10 high-level hunters to handle such a number of monsters. Though severely injured, he spared no effort to defeat them. He cast powerful spells and used combat techniques to drive the creatures back, preventing their advance. In just 1 hour, he eliminated 6 Class C monsters, an extraordinary feat for any hunter. Even Jun, watching from a distance, was impressed and surprised by the man's ability to handle so many enemies alone. Now only the strongest monster remained, the Class A boss, awaiting a final confrontation. This monster was so formidable that even if all 5 Class S hunters in the world worked together, defeating it would be nearly impossible or extremely difficult. Jun watched the events unfold with intense excitement, even though he had heard about them many times before. Hearing about such events was one thing, but witnessing them was a completely different experience, especially because the true power of the Clone Master was about to be revealed, and Jun would finally see the impressive skills for which he was famous. If he waited just a little longer, that incredible power would rightfully become his. The Class A monster launched its attack, but fortunately, the hunter managed to avoid it. Using his magical energy, he jumped away from the attack and propelled himself into the air. Then he intensified the impact of his powerful strike, channeling it toward the monster with relentless force. This technique, known as Blade, was sharp and precise, capable of cutting through anything. Not even the monster's tough and durable body was an exception, and the hunter managed to bring it down with a single blow. The monster immediately collapsed to the ground. Judd noted that the battle had come to an end, and it had been an impressive, breathtaking display beyond any understanding. He decided it was time to go down and begin his plan, heading toward the hunter who had collapsed from exhaustion. Upon reaching him, Jun reflected that everything so far had unfolded exactly as Ji Chaol had described. With a light movement, he shook the hunter, asking if he was okay or feeling anything unusual. He remembered Ji Chaol's words, who had mentioned saving that hunter on that day and acquiring his powers shortly afterward. The hunter began to regain consciousness, coughing heavily due to extreme fatigue and severe injuries. Jun felt confused, not knowing how to help him, and regretted not asking his brother for more details. Finally, with great difficulty, the hunter asked what the exact year was. Jun responded that it was August 2035. The hunter tried to stand, displaying anguish and sorrow. Then he exclaimed in frustration that he had spent nearly 30 years trapped in the dungeon, while only 5 years had passed here. Jun tried to calm him, advising him not to exert himself due to the severity of his injuries and suggesting he rest. The hunter replied that it was already too late for that. Jun understood this reality well, as he was certain the hunter would die that day regardless of anything. The hunter continued, explaining that all of it had happened because he had used nearly all his power trying to reopen the portal. He let out a bitter laugh full of regret, which awakened a deep sense of despair in Jun, who remained silent. The hunter made a specific request, taking out a photo of his family and asking Jun to find them and take care of them, as they might still be alive. Jun replied that it was a great loss, as at that moment he was in no position to care for anyone. The hunter insisted, stating that he was not making the request without reason. He would give his powers to Jun in return. However, to transfer his ability, he needed to know Jun's first name. Faced with the question, Jun hesitated, diving into thoughts about the true reason he was there. The hunter, realizing his time was running out, introduced himself as Park Kang-ho and repeated the question. Jun then recalled his past and the events that had led him to anticipate that moment. He remembered the threat he had received from a hunter with whom he had a troubled relationship, Jonathan, who had invaded his secret hideout in June 2058, about 23 years in the future. Jonathan shouted at Jun, daring him to try and escape from his hands again. At that time, Jun had the ability to copy the powers of any hunter, but was severely injured, with serious wounds covering most of his body. He responded that it seemed there was no escape this time and asked Jonathan, who had revealed his location. Jonathan revealed that Choi Jun-soo, the rank 16 hunter, had betrayed him for $1 million. Choi Jun-soo had promised not to pursue him for a year, but as soon as he received the money, he betrayed Jun and revealed his whereabouts. Upon hearing this, Jun felt a rising fury, realizing he had been deceived. Jonathan added that now that he had obtained the answers he wanted, it was time to finish Jun once and for all. Jun lowered his head, reliving the memories of his parents' deaths, the false accusations that led to his imprisonment, and the car accident that claimed his siblings' lives. He felt as if he had already lost everything. He pulled a small magic stone from his pocket and asked Jonathan if he recognized it. Jonathan's expression turned to pure shock, fearing the stone was exactly what he thought it was. Jun continued, explaining that it was the legendary relic mentioned in various rumors, known as the Returned Stone. Upon hearing the name of the stone, Jonathan flew into a rage and ordered his subordinates to kill Jun immediately before he could activate it. But it was too late. The stone began to glow, activating its power. Jun gave a faint smile and, looking at Jonathan, said he would see him in the past, wishing the stone would take him to a time when his siblings were still alive. The memories of his past and the events that shaped him flooded his mind, and he reaffirmed his determination to carry out his plan. Finally, he answered Kang's question, revealing that his true name was Choi Jun-hyuk. He reached out to Kang, who felt relief that they had finally come to an agreement. Kang began the process using his power to transfer the system. This time, the future belonged to Choi Jun-hyuk. As soon as the process began, the system issued a warning stating that the power transfer would result in the complete destruction of Kang's body. He only laughed maniacally, saying he was going to die anyway, and ordered the transfer to proceed. Minutes later, the system confirmed the successful transfer into Choi Jun-hyuk's body, with data being progressively added. The system analyzed its new host, gradually integrating the acquired skills and capabilities. Jun observed Kang's lifeless body on the ground and heard his final warning not to let his guard down. Although the transfer had been completed, caution was essential to prevent something unexpected from reversing it. Surprised, Jun questioned Kang about the meaning of his words, but before he could get an answer, he felt a presence behind him. He quickly turned and came face to face with an A-class monster that had not yet been eliminated. Kang let out a bitter laugh, murmuring that life was truly full of surprises. The monster roared furiously, preparing to attack Jun and Kang, threatening the success of the transfer. Kang remarked that in fairy tales, heroes always returned home and lived in peace. Catching Jun's attention, who was looking around in panic, he declared that he had already lost all hope. He urged Jun to run before it was too late, saying that this bad luck was still better than losing his life here. He added that this world was chaotic, and to survive they needed to adapt to its madness. However, Kang was perplexed to see Jun holding a metallic object and staring down the monster. Shocked, he asked what Jun was thinking, exclaiming that it was pure madness. Jun responded firmly that he had never been more lucid and aware than in that moment, stating he was tired of running and hiding over and over again. The colossal monster approached, observing them without attacking. When it finally reached Jun, he stood his ground, ready for whatever came next. To their surprise, the creature simply turned and walked away without doing anything. Kang was stunned, while Jun felt relief for not having to fight that moment. Kang commented that they had been unbelievably lucky, but Jun replied that the credit was his. He explained that the monster hadn't attacked because it was severely injured. However, something caught his attention. Kang's body began to gradually fade away. Kang asked Jun to fulfill his promise to find and protect his family. He warned that if the promise was broken, he would never forgive him and would curse him even after death. Then Kang disappeared completely, and 100% of the system data was finally transferred into Choi Jun-hyuk's new body. Although he had expected this outcome, Jun felt deep sorrow. Suddenly, a searing pain surged through his body as if his bones were breaking. It was the beginning of his awakening process. He knew the transformation would be painful, but he hadn't imagined such intensity. It felt as if all his bones were being shattered and rebuilt, while his muscles were torn apart and regenerated. Jun let out a scream of agony as the process continued. After an exhausting night, a wagon rolled through the abandoned city. The driver, enjoying the warmth of the sun, wore a relatively cheerful expression. Upon seeing a familiar figure, he recognized Jun. Surprised to see him there, he wondered to himself what Jun was carrying and where he was going. Sensing someone nearby, Jun turned and saw the driver watching him. Recognizing him, he smiled and asked what had brought him there. Kai responded with curiosity, saying he should be the one asking that question. especially since he had swapped shifts with Jun the night before and had the day off. Jun chuckled awkwardly and explained that he had to return, but ended up having trouble with monsters and got stuck until sunrise. Kai reacted angrily, exclaiming that Jun was crazy for spending the whole night in that place. He asked if Jun had a death wish. Jun just laughed and asked him to stop scolding, assuring him everything was fine and that, thanks to Bang Bang, he had found the real treasure. Then he asked why Kai was there so early, commenting that it was still too early for work and asking about the rest of the team. Kai replied that he had started waking up earlier lately, and that's why he left before the usual time. He added that the rest of the team was already on their way. Jun laughed but noticed that Kai, as always, was hiding something. After all, Park Ki-cheol, the team leader of Hyena that day, was the true owner of the copy ability that Jun had stolen. The primary copy ability allowed its user to replicate and use the powers of other awakened beings. However, Ki-cheol never had much talent for making the most of it. In his previous life, this limitation made him a target, and he ended up being hunted by other awakened ones until, one day, his body was found in an abandoned building. Jun climbed onto the wagon and told Ki-cheol he would go ahead, bidding him a good day. On the way, Jun reflected on how Ki-cheol's downfall in the past was mainly caused by the exposure of his power copying ability. The revelation caused a major stir among the awakened, as his ability to easily replicate powers made him a significant threat. However, Jun had crafted a plan to avoid the same fate. Casting a glance to the side, he saw 3 B-class magic crystals and 4 C-class ones. He felt a slight pang of guilt, knowing Ki-cheol would never be able to find them. Still, he convinced himself that those crystals could save his life, leaving him no choice but to take them. The problem was he didn't know how to use them properly. Just one of those crystals could guarantee a comfortable retirement if sold, but that option was not part of his plans, rendering them practically useless for now. Nevertheless, he knew they were extremely rare. Ki-cheol's words from his past life echoed in his mind. Right after Jun acquired Kang's power, Ki-cheol had expressed deep frustration over never being able to obtain any magic crystals. He mentioned that when he returned the next day, there were none left, and he was furious because no one else had been there besides him. The more he thought about the past, the more he remembered Ki-cheol's regret for not securing those crystals. For that reason, Jun decided not to make the same mistake. After acquiring Kang's power, he began collecting those crystals early on. If they had been monster cores, the need to sell them in complete secrecy would have been even greater. If caught selling or possessing high-level magic energy stones, the Awakened Association and the government would surely investigate their origin. In the worst-case scenario, he wouldn't even get their full value and might be forced to sell them for a pittance. Even worse, he could become a target for hunters and end up as a lifeless body in an abandoned building. The only solution was to register quickly as an awakened one. Jun picked up the phone and called his friend Kang Cheol-min, who answered playfully, asking what had prompted such a busy man like Jun to call him. Jun replied excitedly, saying he had come across some unexpected money and wanted to spend a nice evening with a dear friend. Cheol-min laughed, surprised, saying he couldn't believe Jun not only wanted to go out with him but would also cover the bill. Jun said it was the least he could do, but added that it wouldn't be entirely free. He needed a small favor. Later, Jun visited a local shop and presented the items he had collected to the merchant, asking about their value. The man assessed them and said they had some utility, offering $600 for the lot. Dissatisfied, Jun argued that finding decent items was becoming increasingly difficult and demanded a better price. The merchant explained that in the past, those items might have fetched up to $800, but the current situation was complicated since the demand for expensive goods had drastically decreased. He added that the population was shrinking and rising costs were making people more cautious with their spending. At that moment, 2 children ran toward Jun, crying and calling out to him. When they reached him, they clung tightly, sobbing as they said they were terrified when he didn't come home the night before, fearing he had abandoned them forever. Trying to calm them down, Jun asked them to stop crying and talk to him first. He asked why they were there so early and why they hadn't gone to school yet. The merchant stepped in, questioning why Jun was scolding the kids, pointing out that they'd spent the night worried and couldn't sleep because of his absence. The merchant added that while money was important, Jun should also consider the emotional impact his absence might have on the children if something were to happen to him. Realizing they were still shaken, Jun spoke in a comforting tone, assuring them there was no reason to worry. The children wiped away their tears and said they had stopped crying. Upon hearing that, Jun told them to go home and prepare some meat for lunch. Their faces lit up with joy, showing great excitement about the meal. The younger girl, Chao Yoon-jung, approached Jun and said the grandmother from the upstairs floor wanted to see him as soon as he returned. Jun asked if she met the landlady, and Yoon-jung confirmed, adding that the woman mentioned the overdue rent. Jun went up to apartment 601 with the children and prepared a hearty lunch, filled with delicious dishes. The children ate with enthusiasm and joy, but Jun noticed the grandmother hadn't touched her food. She asked why he had prepared such a feast and what the occasion was. Jun replied that he thought of her when passing by the butcher shop. The grandmother grandmother commented that she hoped he would save the money and food for his siblings. Jun apologized for the delay and handed over the overdue rent. The elderly woman said he could have paid later since she had planned to charge only half, considering the difficulties he was going through. Jun insisted it wasn't necessary, but Chang-soo intervened, saying that in hard times, people should help each other and that Jun should accept the offer. The grandmother smacked Chang-soo with her chopsticks, saying she didn't need anyone talking as if they'd own the house. Chang-soo groaned in pain and complained that chopsticks were meant for eating, not for cracking skulls, adding that the house would be his once she died. The grandmother became even more annoyed, raised the chopsticks threateningly, and scolded him for neglecting his studies, which had caused her a night of stomach pains. Chang-soo defended himself, saying he wasn't wasting time but studying combat techniques for hunters, preparing for his future awakening. The grandmother responded sarcastically, saying that if everyone learned on their own, there would be no need for universities. Chang-soo argued that this was the era of awakened beings and hunters, the foundation of the current world, and that the grandmother didn't understand anything about it. She turned to Jun, asking him to say a few words to make her grandson see reason, but at that moment, Jun's phone rang. Seeing that it was the person he had been waiting for, Jun stepped away from the conversation and answered. Shou-min informed him that he had spoken with the team leader and secured a meeting for him. Jun, excited, asked if it was true. Shou-min confirmed but explained that the job wouldn't be paid. However, if Jun performed well, he could be accepted as a regular team member even in a lower-ranking role. Jun agreed immediately. Surprised by the sudden change in attitude, Shou-min commented that Jun had never accepted simple roles like carrying tools. Jun silently reflected that he didn't care about the position. He was doing it to help Shou-min. He replied that work with Hyena had become more difficult and that he was exploring other options. Ko-min informed him that the team would leave at 8 a.m. and that Jun needed to be at the West Gate no later than 7 a.m. Jun felt relieved to see that his plan was progressing as intended, taking his first steps toward his goal. The next morning, he arrived at the West Gate of the wall, waiting for the rest of the team. A voice called out to him, interrupting his thoughts about copying the defensive members' abilities and heading straight to the association. It was Shou-min, laughing when he saw Jun's excitement and commenting that he had arrived early, just as agreed. Jun greeted Shou-min and laughed with him, all while continuing to plan his registration as a defensive member to obtain the resources he needed. Shou-min took Jun to the team leader and introduced him, just as he had the day before. The leader approached, introduced himself as Yu Sang-jae, a member of the defense and team leader, and asked Jun to speak informally since there was a big age gap between them. Jun replied that if Shou-min considered him an older brother, then he would too, adding that he was excited to work with him. Sang-jae said he was also looking forward to the collaboration and shook hands with both of them. At that moment, Jun felt immense joy as his copying ability activated, transferring Sang-jae's skills to him. The system displayed a list of abilities. The first was a unique skill called Compressed Iron Skin at level 1, which provided over 1,000 defense points, absorbed 10% of received damage, and could be used without being registered in the skill list. The second unique skill was Latif Shield Strike at level 11, which struck the enemy with a shield, drawing their attention, dealing 300 cumulative damage points, and increasing aggression rate by 95%. It could be used without being added to the skill pack, but had a 30-minute cooldown and consumed all energy. The third skill was Destruction Card at level 5, which released an aura capable of intimidating enemies, drawing their attention, increasing aggression rate by 130%, and reducing the target's attack power by 10%. It was executed instantly with a 1-hour cooldown and no specific energy consumption. Jun chose to copy the Destruction Card and Compressed Iron Skin abilities, and the system began integrating them into his database. After some time, the system announced that the copying process had been successful, and that the copied skills were now available in the skill list. Jun was ecstatic, especially since the handshake had lasted only a brief moment, yet the copying process had occurred at an incredible speed during that time. Sang-jae noticed Jun's inexplicable happiness and found it strange. Shou-min also picked up on it and asked what he was doing. Surprised by the question, Jun listened as Shou-min went on, mentioning his suspicious smile. Sang-jae laughed and remarked that Jun's grip strength was unusual for someone with his appearance. Jun quickly let go of the hand, but Sang-jae reassured him, encouraging him to do his best on the mission. Then he said it was time to head to the vehicle waiting for them. Jun looked at the vehicle and saw several people inside. He assumed they were the team members who would accompany him on the mission. They all looked extremely powerful with impressive abilities. Sang-jae instructed Jun to greet the team members before departure. Jun realized that everyone around him was a first-class awakened, which meant that once he started copying their rare and unique abilities, they would no longer seem so exceptional. Even if he had to discard some of the skills later, he knew it was essential to copy them now. He boarded the vehicle with the team, and the group set off toward their destination. During the ride, Jun managed to copy about 13 skills. He noticed that some team members had healing abilities and realized how valuable those could be. Additionally, there were mapping and trap-setting skills that also caught his interest. Among the acquired skills, 7 were combat-based, all incredibly powerful. Jun felt that joining this mission had been one of his best decisions, as it would allow him to perform the roles of healer, defender, attacker, mapper, and trap specialist. After a while, the team arrived at their destination, an abandoned and evacuated area due to the presence of monsters. As soon as they arrived, the monsters began attacking the hunters. Sanji used his shield defense to prevent them from escaping. Jun reflected on the limited number of skills he could store in his skill package, realizing that their diversity would make him stronger depending on how he coordinated them. While immersed in these thoughts, Sanji called Lee Dong-hyuk and signaled the start of the attack plan. Dong-hyuk acknowledged the signal and began his assault, firing arrows with extreme precision. Each arrow hit vital points. Next, Sanji called Seo Yi-jun, who was positioned on a rooftop, and instructed her to eliminate the monsters quickly. Seo followed the order, firing a powerful and swift arrow at the strongest monster. Unable to dodge, the creature was fatally hit and fell dead instantly. Sanji informed the team that only 2 monsters remained. Jun watched from a distance, realizing there wasn't much he could do at that moment. He decided to use the time to register the newly acquired skills, knowing that once registered, he wouldn't be able to change them for the next 24 hours. His original plan was to register as a hunter after completing this mission, but he realized there was no need to wait any longer. After the mission ended, Sanji approached the team members and congratulated them on completing another job without complications. He praised Jun, highlighting his endurance, especially considering the unusually high number of byproducts collected that day compared to previous missions. Normally, these situations were exhausting for porters due to the excessive weight, often leaving them drained. He pointed to one of the porters struggling to carry the load. At that moment, Shounen chimed in, telling Sanji that Jun was known in high school for his strength and firm grip. Sanji showed mild admiration and asked if he was referring to the time before the Great Catastrophe. Shounen confirmed, adding that before the disaster, Jun had incredible reflexes, and without any training, outperformed athletes who were considered his rivals. Sanji joked, asking if that meant Jun was a troublemaker who used to bully others. Shounen clarified that calling him a troublemaker would be an exaggeration, explaining that Jun only stood up to bad people, and that his dream had been to become a detective when he grew up. He added that if the world hadn't changed, Jun would undoubtedly have become an exceptional detective. Sanji then handed Jun some money as a reward for his efforts. Jun firmly declined, saying he couldn't accept it, as he had previously agreed not to receive any payment. However, Sanji insisted he take it and just be thankful, pointing out that Jun had been crucial to the mission's success, and that the porter wouldn't have been able to handle the load alone. He then asked if Jun had ever considered becoming a full-time porter for hunters, offering to recommend him to a suitable team if he was interested. Jun thanked him and said he would definitely think about the offer. Sanji said his goodbyes, suggesting they meet again if the opportunity arose. Shounen reminded Jun about the promise to pay for barbecue. Jun replied that it wouldn't happen this time as he had important matters to deal with first, but promised he'd pay next time. Shounen teased Jun, saying he wasn't used to seeing him so busy, but Jun refused to reveal where he was going. At the Awakened Association building in the Seoul branch, inside one of the offices dedicated to registering hunters in the Defender category, the secretary was visibly surprised by what Jun had just said. With a confused expression, she asked him to repeat and clarify his words. Jun responded that he had come to register as an Awakened. The secretary informed him that the office was exclusively for registering Defenders and asked if he was sure he belonged in that category. Jun confirmed confidently, stating that he had awakened as a Defender that very day. The secretary stared at him in astonishment for a moment before speaking again. Jun asked if there was a problem or if something had gone wrong. She reassured him that there was no problem, but admitted she was surprised as Jun was the first Defender to awaken in the past 6 months. Still, she congratulated him and asked if he had brought his identification card. Jun confirmed and handed it over for verification. The secretary asked him to sit down and wait until he was called. Jun complied, and while waiting, he began reflecting on the past and the life he had lived before. He sighed deeply, feeling as if he were still in a dream, unable to fully comprehend how far back in time he had come. Memories of his time in prison came flooding back, along with the visits from his brothers, which had ended tragically in the car accident that killed them. He remembered the anguish of those times, the tears shed, and the crushing pain that consumed him. The death of his brothers had been the main catalyst for his descent into villainy. However, after going back to the past and seeing them alive and well, his feelings completely changed, bringing him immense joy. At first, he thought it was all just a dream and didn't want to wake up. Now he was determined not to lose the people he loved again. He resolved to use all of his strength to protect them, sparing no effort. As he reflected, he activated his skill and opened the system interface, analyzing the reports. He noticed the average endurance levels ranged between 6,000 and 15,000, while strength levels fluctuated between 2,000 and 5,000. This meant that 15,000 endurance and 5,000 strength were the upper limits for a first awakening. However, he noticed a new feature called core generation, the meaning and utility of which were unknown to him. Jun recalled that Kaichil hadn't mentioned anything about this, but concluded that he would figure out its purpose sooner or later. At that moment, the secretary called the name Choi Jun-hyuk. Jun was caught off guard, his thoughts interrupted, and he turned toward the secretary who had called him. Beside her, a man in a white lab coat returned his ID card and informed him that the identity verification had been completed and they could proceed with the next steps. The secretary asked Jun to follow the specialist to complete the tests. The specialist extended his hand for a handshake, introducing himself as Lim Jae-hoon. Jun returned the gesture, introducing himself as Choi Jun-hyuk and saying it was a pleasure to meet him. Jae-hoon informed him that everything was ready and they could begin the tests immediately. Jun followed Jae-hoon to the testing site, getting into the vehicle with him. During the ride, Jun realized that Jae-hoon was a regular person and not an awakened, which meant he couldn't copy any abilities from him. Although Jae-hoon's work with the association had initially made Jun believe he might be awakened, he soon realized that regular people were also part of the team. They finally arrived at the testing chamber, where Jae-hoon informed him that the exam would be divided into 3 stages, the first of which was to assess his endurance and physical strength levels. Once the preparations were complete, Jae-hoon said everything was ready and they could begin. Jun took a firm position in the testing chair while the machines were activated. Jae-hoon reassured him, promising the process wouldn't take more than 10 minutes and advised him to stay relaxed and calm. After completing that stage, they moved on to the second phase, which involved testing Jun's special ability, Shield Strike. For this, a simulated monster model was used, which Jun was to fight while Jae-hoon and his team observed his performance from the control room. Jae-hoon explained that the test would also measure his stress levels and assured him the process was simple. Jun understood that his objective was to use his special skill to strike the simulated monster, regardless of the area hit, and that he shouldn't hesitate. With great force, Jun activated Shield Strike and struck the monster. The specialists in the observation room were impressed by the power and intensity of his blows. They then moved on to the final phase, the overall assessment. Jae-hoon offered Jun a warm drink and informed him that due to certain circumstances, the evaluators for this stage were delayed, which meant the evaluation was postponed for 2 days. Jun took the drink and asked if that meant they were finished for the day. Jae-hoon confirmed that all previous stages had been completed and directed him to the office to receive the basic equipment required. Showing gratitude and surprise, Jun commented that he could hardly believe the day had finally come for him to receive gear from the association. Jae-hoon shared his concern about the decline in the number of awakened in the defender and healer categories, highlighting that those numbers had dropped significantly in the last 5 years following the Great Catastrophe. He explained that although those who awakened through forced awakening stones helped meet classification requirements, most of them became fighters or support types. He added that awakening stones for defenders and healers were extremely rare, and that even with them, there was no guarantee of a successful awakening. Jun knew this and considered himself lucky to have awakened differently, especially considering his past as a wanted criminal. He was aware that if he were still a criminal, he wouldn't be able to register as an awakened again. Jae-hoon realized he was talking too much and apologized, explaining that he hadn't met a defender in a long time, which made him more enthusiastic than usual, even though he wasn't someone who talked much. Jun reassured him, saying the conversation didn't bother him. Jae-hoon reminded Jun about the final evaluation scheduled for 2 days later and asked him to return at the time specified in the message he would receive the next day. Jun smiled excitedly upon hearing this and shook Jae-hoon's hand with enthusiasm, expressing his anticipation for their next meeting. After completing the procedures at the association center, Jun left and began his journey back home. Carrying the association's bag with the basic equipment for an awakened, he tried calling his friend, Cheolmin, to share what happened. After a while, Cheolmin finally answered the call, and Jun asked if he could talk at that moment. Cheolmin wanted to know if it was something important. Jun replied that it wasn't urgent, but told him he had awakened as a defender that day and was on his way home. Cheolmin was shocked in disbelief and asked if Jun was joking or being serious. Jun assured him that he wouldn't joke about something like that. As the conversation continued, he entered a building and looked around to confirm he was in the right place. Still skeptical, Cheolmin asked once more if he had really awakened as a defender and not something else. Jun reaffirmed that he wouldn't lie about something so important and confirmed his awakening as a defender. Cheolmin expressed his surprise, commenting on how they had just been together recently and how such a monumental event could happen so quickly. Jun paused, staring at an absurdly expensive item on display, sarcastically thinking that anyone willing to pay $3 million for it had to be crazy. After a brief connection drop, Cheolmin resumed the call and heard Jun explain that he had visited the association that day, registered as an awakened, and was informed that he would undergo a defender evaluation test in 3 days. Jun commented that watching experienced hunters could help him a lot and asked if he could join them again, even if just as a porter. Cheolmin replied that he had already seen them earlier, Jun remarked that he had been so busy carrying equipment that he couldn't properly observe Sang-ji during the battle. Laughing, he finally found the item he had been looking for, feeling a sense of victory and satisfaction. Kyeolmin said he would explain the situation to Sang-ji and get back to him with an answer later. Jun picked up the bracelet he found and approached the vendor, saying he would buy it along with an elixir. He remembered that this bracelet was an artifact once possessed by Jaden Russell, the third ranked among the villains. He recalled that before returning to the past, when he was an 8th level villain, he had met Jaden, who explained the bracelet's properties and how to use it. The vendor gave Jun a suspicious look but said nothing. Jun noticed the strange look and recalled Jaden's explanation about the bracelet, including the fact that merely possessing it increased skill efficiency by 30%. He asked the vendor why he was being stared at and if there was a problem. The vendor apologized and asked if he could ask a question, wanting to know if Jun had awakened that day. Jun confirmed, and suddenly, he was caught off guard when he saw the vendor preparing to throw a punch. Jun tried to block it but realized the strike stopped before reaching him. The vendor explained that he knew about Jun's awakening and revealed that he was also an awakened, possessing a teleportation ability. Jun felt slightly embarrassed upon realizing that the vendor hadn't meant to attack him but was greeting him in a unique way. He returned the greeting and successfully copied the vendor's teleportation ability. At that moment, another person appeared, introducing himself as Huang Manso, also an awakened with spatial manipulation abilities. Huang extended his hand in greeting, expressing how pleased he was to meet him. Jun shook his hand, saying he was also happy to meet them and felt excited to gain the ability he had been needing so much. The vendor commented that he had overheard Jun's phone conversation and learned about his Defender evaluation test. He added that being a Defender was considered a noble classification among the awakened and joked that he felt envious of Jun. Jun responded that he never expected to meet awakened individuals in that place and asked if that job was a side gig in addition to their hunter careers. The vendor explained that it was actually his main occupation. Jun was surprised, but the vendor clarified that the large number of support class awakened made it difficult to find work in the field. He added that since his ability wasn't useful in combat, he ended up opening a small shop to sell supplies and artifacts as a means of livelihood. Jun reflected on how hard life could be even for the awakened, as the vendor handed him the elixir, informing him that the price for both the elixir and the bracelet was 350,000, but he would sell them for 300,000. Jun thanked him and realized that he now had almost everything he needed, including the elixir, the bracelet, and the D-class crystals he had stored at home. He felt that he had gathered most of what he was looking for. He put on the bracelet, called the Twilight Bracelet. As soon as he wore it, system notifications appeared, informing him that artifact number 38 out of 101 items created by the original master of the system had been unlocked, registered into the system, and that a total of 16 artifacts were now listed in the artifact registry. The bracelet now fully belonged to Choi Jun-hyuk, the new master of the system. However, Jun was intrigued by the message, not understanding the meaning behind the 101 items created by the system's master. At that moment, his phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. Seeing the caller ID, he realized it was his friend Kyeolmin. Jun quickly answered and asked what the call was about. Kyeolmin said he had spoken with the team leader Sang-ji about Jun's request, but the leader found the idea ridiculous and unbelievable, saying he would only believe it if he saw the change with his own eyes. Jun laughed and told Kyeolmin that he had scared him for a moment, thinking he was about to say the request had been denied. Kyeolmin laughed back, teasing Jun for being so serious. Meanwhile, Jun activated his newly acquired spatial manipulation ability and created a subspace. Kyeolmin informed Jun that the meeting was scheduled for 7 a.m. at Gate 7, the same gate as the last mission, and reminded him not to be late. Jun retrieved his bag with the basic gear from the subspace and assured Kyeolmin that he wouldn't be late and said he'd see him the next day. The next day, Jun arrived at the meeting point and found the entire team already gathered. He greeted them, but their faces showed surprise and amazement at seeing him standing before them in his new combat suit. Kyeolmin looked at Jun in disbelief, commenting that the new outfit confirmed he had really awakened as a defender and that it wasn't a joke. Sang-ji also expressed his surprise, even though Kyeolmin had already mentioned the situation to him. He asked Jun what could have happened in a single day to cause such a drastic change. Slightly embarrassed, Jun replied that he had awakened as a defender while heading home the previous day. Captain Sang-ji responded, saying he knew that natural awakening rates had significantly decreased recently, and that what had happened to Jun was truly remarkable. Jun answered that he had already mentioned this to Kyeolmin, but was still waiting for his evaluation test as a defender the next day. That's why he decided to join the team that day to observe Captain Sang-ji while he gave orders. Believing that this experience could help him, he apologized if his request caused any inconvenience. Captain Sang-ji replied, saying he didn't know if there was anything he could teach Jun, but offered a simple piece of advice as someone who had started in the job before him. The captain then asked Jun if he knew the real reason for carrying a shield, emphasizing that it wasn't just about being a defender, but about choosing to be one. He added that during battles against monsters, there would be moments when Jun would feel exhausted and drained. At those specific times, what would help him get back up wouldn't be his stats or skills, but his determination and resolve. After those motivational words, Jun departed with the team toward the mission site, which was in a school courtyard. There, they spotted a huge monster resembling a giant bear. Each team member took their position and temporarily hid. Captain Sanji asked if they had already identified the monster and its type, and the team confirmed. He ordered Jang Dae-jun to check the monster's location using his skill. Dae-jun used his map creation ability, and a detailed map of the area showing the monster's position appeared before the captain. Sanji examined the map and informed the team that both the type and location of the monster had been identified. He announced that in fact there were two monsters, not just one, and both were of the advanced class. However, their attack power was low and their movement slow. On the other hand, their defenses were equivalent to those of Class E monsters. Chai Yul-min expressed concern, fearing the team might not be strong enough to take on the monsters. Dong Hak replied that he already felt exhausted even before the mission started. He asked how long it might take to break the monster's shields and added that attacking one might provoke retaliation from the other, which was in the sports court. Sang-ji acknowledged that possibility but pointed out that the monster's slow movement was an advantage. He added that their team was one of the most experienced in handling such situations, and as long as they followed the plan, there would be no obstacles. The team's healer assured that monsters with weak attacks wouldn't be a problem that day. Although the fighters might face some difficulties, Captain Sang-ji asked Ji Cheol if the traps were in the designated locations, and Ji Cheol confirmed everything was ready. The captain then ordered Chi Yul-min and Dong Hyuk to go with him, while Hai Seo and Jun Hyuk were to remain in their positions until further orders. The team moved to confront the monsters, but Jun felt a growing sense of apprehension. His concern deepened, especially remembering what he had heard about the complete annihilation of Sang-ji's group caused by the unexpected appearance of another monster during a mission. Jun thought that if the mentioned monster was similar to the ones there, the group wouldn't have much trouble defeating it. However, something felt off and Jun looked toward the building, sensing something was missing in the plan. As Captain Sang-ji began executing his strategy, he asked Yi Jin if she was in position to fire. She replied that she was ready. The captain gave the signal, and she immediately fired a powerful and fast arrow at the monster. However, the arrow failed to penetrate the monster's robust shield, causing no damage. Yi Jin announced she would move to another position, since the first attack had been ineffective. The captain expressed frustration, commenting that things were unfolding exactly as he predicted, and that the mission wouldn't be easy. The monster awoke from its slumber, enraged and ready to attack. The captain shouted a warning to the team, advising them the monster was moving and ordering them to execute the plan quickly. Chae Yul-min and Dong Hek responded that they were fully prepared. The monster charged toward them and began to attack fiercely. Dong Hek tried to hit weak spots not covered by the shield and managed to land 3 direct hits with his arrows. The monster roared in pain, momentarily halting its assault. Feeling confident, Dong Hek believed he had made significant progress, but Captain Sang-ji warned him to stay focused and keep a safe distance. Ignoring the captain's instructions, Dong Hek declared he would move in to finish the mission quickly, as he was feeling exhausted. He rushed toward the monster, firing several more arrows before the creature collapsed to the ground. Dong Hyuk expressed a desire to finish the mission and go home to rest. He continued bombarding the monster with arrows, disregarding the captain's warnings. He replied to the captain, saying the monster was too slow to retaliate effectively. To everyone's surprise, the monster suddenly lunged at Dong Hyuk with immense force, striking him directly and hurling him against the wall with great impact. Chai Yul-min feared for Dong Hyuk's safety, but couldn't abandon his position. As the monster approached Dong Hyuk, Chai Yul-min informed the captain he was joining the fight. Chai Yul-min leaped high into the air and struck the monster with a sharp blow from his weapon, managing to pierce its sturdy shield. However, the damage was minimal. Chai Yul-min realized the shield's incredible durability, making the monster a formidable opponent. The monster continued advancing toward Dong Hyuk, preparing to deliver a fatal blow with its sharp claws. Dong Hyuk was paralyzed with fear, unable to escape or defend himself. In a critical moment, Captain Sang-jae intervened with incredible speed, intercepting the monster's attack with a powerful blow from his shield. The force of the strike pushed the monster back, providing a moment of relief. The monster quickly recovers, becoming even more aggressive and violent in its attacks. Captain Sang-ji struggles to block the monster's blows while giving commands to the team. He instructs Chi Yul-min to prepare for a close-range strike, while assigning Dong Hyuk and Yi Jin to maintain long-range attacks. The captain uses his skill to draw the monster's full attention to himself. The monster attacks Sang-ji ferociously, delivering a series of powerful and relentless strikes. Sang-ji uses his shield with all of his strength to block the assault. Meanwhile, the rest of the team joins the fight, launching deadly arrows at the monster, trying to break its tough defenses and defeat it. Dong Hyuk signals to Ye Jin that it's the perfect time to fire. Without hesitation, Ye Jin shoots an arrow with precision, hitting the monster directly in the head. However, the attack isn't lethal enough. The monster shifts into a defensive stance, shielding itself with its robust armor. Seizing the opportunity, Captain Sang Ja calls Chi Yul Min for a close-range strike. The team attacks from different angles, coordinating their efforts against the monster. The captain orders the team to continue their main assaults until further instructions. While struggling to break through the monster's defense, Chi Yul Min comments that just looking at its shield makes him feel exhausted. He and Captain Sang Ja continue their relentless attacks as Jun watches their efforts intently. The healer comments that if they're lucky, the mission might end right there. However, she expresses her frustration, saying that their team always gets the hardest missions. Jun is surprised by her comment and asks what she means. The healer explains that armored monsters are extremely rare and a lucky hunter might encounter one once or twice a year. Curious, Jun asks how many times their team has faced armored monsters. She replies that their team has encountered them 3 times in the past 6 months, calling it pure bad luck. She adds that Jun seems quite eager to learn, given how many questions he's asking. Jun apologizes if he's bothering her, but she pulls out a small device and hands it to him. Jun asks about the device and its purpose. She explains that it's called the Garum M7, a measurement device developed by the Garum company. She suggests that since Jun is there to observe monster hunting strategies in preparation for his test, simply watching might not be enough. She advises him to use the device to analyze statistics and combat details, which could help him in both the test and future challenges. The healer explains that the armored monster has 30,000 health points, while its shield has 150,000 defense points, an incredibly high level compared to most monsters. Feeling frustrated, Jun comments that it would take a lifetime to break such a shield. At that moment, the mapper announces a serious problem. The vital signs of the team assigned to deal with the second monster have suddenly disappeared from the map. Captain Sang-ji is stunned and demands an explanation about the sudden disappearance of Sang-nam's entire team. Jun, sensing something is wrong, looks toward the building where that team had been stationed. He notices the building is shaking violently. Suddenly, the wall collapses and a strange creature emerges. It's a giant mantis heading toward the team. Jun immediately realizes the gravity of the situation and the difficulty the team will face dealing with this new threat. The team members panic knowing they haven't yet defeated the first monster and now have to face a second. They ask how much time is left before the mantis reaches them and discover they have less than 2 minutes. Captain Sang-ji shouts, ordering Jun Hyuk and Haiseo to leave the area immediately and find a safer location. At that moment, Jun understands that the sense of danger he had felt earlier was due to the presence of this deadly mantis nearby. The captain orders Ji Chao to prepare the containment traps and Ye Jin to stay in position and be ready. Jun grabs Haiseo's hand, urging her to quickly leave the danger zone. Haiseo nervously agrees, saying yes, but is shocked when Jun leads her toward Captain Sang-ji and the second armored monster instead of retreating. She asks him why they're going in that direction, and he replies that retreating from this distance is practically impossible. If the monster catches them, they'll be torn apart. Captain Sang-ji notices Jun approaching and yells at him, ordering him to retreat according to the previous instructions. Jun confidently replies that retreat is no longer an option, as the mantis is much faster than they are. He adds that dealing with the armored monster would take over 30 minutes, and if the mantis joins the fight, they'll all be wiped out. Meanwhile, the gigantic mantis quickly flies toward the team. It reaches Jun's position, where he stands holding his shield, ready for the attack. Jun turns to the team and tells them that their only option now is to hold out for as long as possible. Jun Hyuk is questioned by a colleague, asking if he's gone mad because of his audacity. The colleague seems worried about Jun Hyuk's actions. He argues that not all awakened are the same, claiming that the colleague is a rookie with no real combat experience. The colleague insists that Jun Hyuk is a complete beginner who hasn't gone through virtual combat simulations, saying it's reckless to challenge monsters. The giant mantis attacks. The scene shows a powerful and intimidating creature, ready for battle. Jun Hyuk defends himself from the mantis' blows using his shield with strength and skill. The armored guy is confronted by his colleague about his plans to enter real combat as soon as he receives his awakening registration card. Jun Hyuk emphasizes that tanks must endure hits and seems determined to face the challenge. He flees from the massive creature with agility and skill, successfully dodging a direct attack, demonstrating his combat experience. Jun Hyuk executes a shield strike against the mantis. He appears confident in his abilities. He mourns to learn everything possible before real combat to avoid mistakes. The knight is shocked by the advice. His companion states that the fight is real, and Jun Hyuk admits he knows that, but believes it's not the time to worry about other problems. A huge monster approaches. The young man and his ally prepare for the fight. They face the monster in a narrow passage. The ally questions whether Sang-jin will be able to hold the monster in the passage. The young man seems worried. The situation seems critical. A huge and ferocious bear appears. It's immense and terrifying. The characters seem desperate. The bear attacks. The assault is violent, moment, an ally is struck directly. The knight orders someone to assist, creating a distraction to buy time. He asks the companion to support them as a long-range shooter. The shooter runs toward the battle. An attack is launched at two other warriors. The situation remains tense. The knight holds his shield with a serious expression. He says he's with the real Decker. The other fighter approaches, ready for battle. The monster chases its target. Its attack is powerful, and allies hit hard. The warrior falls. He is injured in the fight. The combat remains brutal. An order is given to Kang Ji-cheol to use a trap on the real Decker. The situation feels tense and urgent. Ji-cheol responds affirmatively to the order. He prepares to act, throwing an object. He throws a ball toward the bear. The previously thrown object reveals itself to be a chain, binding the bear. The chain seems very strong. The bear is restrained but still able to move. The trap duration is limited to 5 minutes. The knight kneels and says the real Decker is in front and the mantis is behind. The escape route is blocked. The team is in a desperate situation. They gain some time, but their chances of escape are slim. The protagonist with the shield prepares to strike. The giant mantis is hit by an arrow, but is unaffected. The protagonist uses his shield to block the mantis' attack. The giant mantis is struck by an energy beam. Jun-hyuk observes the scene, commenting that defeating the monster in one blow is difficult. The woman fires an arrow with precision, hitting the monster, and someone praises her shot. The monster dodges the attack and moves toward where the woman was. The man shouts a warning to the woman as the monster changes its target to her. The woman realizes the danger, becoming visibly worried. She becomes desperate and is hit by the attack. The man sees her injured, screams her name in despair, and tries to fire an arrow. The monster continues its assault, but the arrow only leaves a small scratch. The man grows frustrated. The situation is tense. Two people observe a troubling scene. One of them shows concern. The other seems tense. Jun-hyuk reflects on a strategic error. He admits carelessness. The situation worsens. He examines an artifact and appears to analyze options. A crucial decision approaches. His eyes shine intensely. He senses imminent danger. Yi-jin is in peril. The screen displays information about an artifact. It describes the skills and options. The risk is high. It shows a high-risk option. The effectiveness boost of the skills is significant. He weighs the action. Jun-hyuk prepares for a decisive move. He seems determined. The outcome is uncertain. The monstrous creature appears to attack the girl, but a blue energy surrounds her. The woman is injured on the ground, pieces of concrete around her. The situation is critical. The outcome of the fight is uncertain. The brown-haired woman screams a command to retreat something, her face expressing urgency and strain. The threatening-looking giant insect with glowing red eyes stares at the girl who begs for mercy. The giant monster appears in a city as the woman and the protagonist position themselves to confront it. The young woman shows fear and disbelief about the situation she's in. The woman runs somewhere. He shouts the woman's name. Jun-hyuk, with glowing eyes, celebrates the success of his move, revealing the effectiveness of a plan. He raises an alert, worried, asking about someone's well-being while the other responds briefly. The man questions the claim of being okay, expressing disbelief and concern in the face of a threatening creature. The giant insect retreats, while the man states he managed to control the situation, seemingly neutralizing the threat. The monster attacks, and Jun-hyuk comments that he's regained the monster's attention. He runs using a shield for protection and moves quickly. He states that holding the enemy's attention with just basic attacks is far too risky. He needs to use a special skill called Destructive Body, and hesitates, but has no choice. The Destructive Body skill is an option for the warrior. He must decide whether to activate the ability or not. The giant monster returns with greater force. Jun-hyuk needs more power and decides to equip a passive skill. The fight is becoming more intense and dangerous. Jun-hyuk crouches and explains that his strategy will increase his basic damage. He smiles, feeling a sense of familiarity with the situation, recognizing a sensation from the past. The warrior remembers his past life before becoming a villain. He recalls the awakening of his powers. The giant mantis is hit by an arrow. Jun-hyuk comments that his perception ranks it among the top 8 most powerful villains. He uses his shield, activating his hyper-perception, showing a special ability. He strikes the mantis powerfully, seemingly using a potent attack. The mantis is destroyed by the man's attack, showing cracks and disintegration. The injured woman, with torn clothes and bleeding, readies her bow and arrow. She feels desperate and frustrated from excessive blood loss and says her strength is fading. The panel emphasizes the severity of her condition. Another woman arrives and calls the first by name, healing her wounds. The woman asks the first not to scream. The distraction hinders concentration. She wants focus during the treatment. The injured woman argues that the healing should be directed at the man because he is more important in the current situation. The woman with healing powers tries to help but reveals she can only heal if he's already wounded, so she can't act without a pre-existing injury. She comments on Jun-hyuk's unpredictable nature, calling him insane, and explains that healing him is only possible if he suffers damage rather than preventive healing, due to his role as the group's leader. Jun-hyuk flees from a giant insect, showing incredible speed and agility. The other man strikes a dark, gigantic creature. The monstrous bear roars, and someone comments on the fragility of the enemy's defense. The knight plans a strategy to defeat the bear and advises the use of powerful attacks, while another another expresses concern about the enemy possibly changing focus. The man assures them that he will keep the bear's focus. He asserts his authority and demands obedience from his team. The enraged bear attacks violently. Then the knight prepares for the creature's attack. He expresses excitement for the opportunity and shows confidence in his strategy. The bear attacks the man with force and he tries to defend himself with a shield. The warrior strikes with his shield while a timer warns that a trap will only last 10 more seconds. He yells the name Chiolman, saying it's time to act. The man attacks with a sword, performing a fast and precise strike. He declares a critical hit, revealing a card. Then the giant bear is about to explode and someone pleads for him to do it. The man declares that it worked after the bear explodes. Then the knight says a critical hit was landed and that the fight is over on their side. The man calls out Hyung. He finds a core and a skill card celebrating his luck. The knight says it's not the time for that and that someone else needs immediate help. Jun-hyuk fights against the giant mantis. He watches the battle and asks, "What is that?" He then requests the defeated enemy be taken away after the fight. The other man comments that Jun-hyuk defeated the enemy alone and now wants help carrying the body. The man suggests that Choi Jun-hyuk finish the fight on his own. Choi Jun-hyuk agrees and asks if anyone objects. The others agree. The woman declares she won't help because she's not the type who lives on favors. She shoots an arrow that hits the mantis. The mantis is hit and retreats. Choi Jun-hyuk jumps on top of the mantis. He attacks the giant monster's head. The creature falls completely defeated. One of the companions calls him. A quick action is shown with him pulling the shield off the monster. The knight questions whether he truly awakened as a tanker, expressing doubt. Jun-hyuk has a marked and serious face. A scene shows buildings in a city under a night sky. A leader orders everyone to hurry and prepare for evacuation. The knight exclaims that everyone is tired but must speed up, as delays could lead to more monster appearances. Then Jun-hyuk examines the stained shield. The other man accuses Jun-hyuk of using that thing, hyper-perception, which he used during tough fights in high school. He explains that he means hyper-perception and recalls that using the skill previously caused severe headaches for a whole day. Jun-hyuk's movements make no sense unless he used his hyper-perception. He then asks if the other is okay. Maybe due to the awakening, the man says he's envious since people succeed doing what they do. Jun-hyuk invites him to have a drink, but the other declines, saying he needs to be with his siblings. Someone calls Jun-hyuk, who asks who it is. The man on the phone says he really awakened the day before and is impressed by his strength. A man is impressed by the other's strength and asks how a rookie can have such endurance. The knight says that this is all exactly, as the other had suggested earlier. He questions the exactly, showing disbelief or surprise. Jun-hyuk says exactly. The other man with a serious expression doesn't understand what's going on. Jun-hyuk explains that due to a difficult situation, he unconsciously released superhuman strength, something that even surprised him. The knight questions the credibility of the man's explanation. He doubts the story and orders everyone to pay attention because he has something important to say. He gives instructions to a group, including speaking, and says he has something to say to everyone while several figures wait in formation. The man declares that Jun-hyuk faced the mantis alone, despite not being officially registered as an awakened one, and says that even though the circumstances left them no choice, Jun-hyuk and the others may face consequences for fighting before his registration. Jun-hyuk says he almost became a villain again and suggests that everyone keep the day's events to themselves. The archer woman gives a smile. Two men talk and one reassures the other, saying there's no need to worry. The second says they'll keep the secret until death. Sang-jin thanks the protagonist for his help. Jun-hyuk questions this. The man states that without someone's help that day, they'd all be dead. He announces that he will include him in the profit distribution, specifically as a tanker. The protagonist asks if including him in the profit distribution means others will receive less. The woman says no one would complain about a change in the profit split. Then Jun-hyuk says Haisu's name. He asks that whoever has something to say speak now. The woman jokingly says she'll stop healing people. Then Jun-hyuk apologizes for needing to take a call, but the woman asks if it's his girlfriend. The protagonist explains that his siblings are at home. Then the phone shows an incoming call from the association. He responds with a confused, "Huh." A scene shows tall buildings at night. Jun-hyuk is in a white room and asks if his test has been moved up. A man explains that hunters sent to Thailand are returning. Then the protagonist questions the relation between the hunter's return and his test, while the other explains that a monster appeared in Thailand. Despite Korea being the third strongest in hunters in Asia, they scored highly on the Thailand mission. He understands that the association is focused on the Thailand mission. Jun-hyuk realizes that the association wants to get rid of him quickly. He answers the phone, says he understands, and will start immediately, apologizing for the rush. Jun-hyuk is informed that the test will be a simulated battle in a virtual combat room using specialized equipment, and that the simulation is similar to the simulation room from before a regression. The man also explains that the test will be against an F-rank level monster for 1 hour, and the longer he resists, the higher the score, and states that preparations are complete. 3 people in business attire observe. The man asks if the judges can begin now. One of them looks and nods. The man in the lab coat says he understands. Then the protagonist is informed that the test will begin, and he prepares for the fight. A shark-like creature attacks with force. Jun-hyuk, using the shield, asks in surprise if the top hunters have arrived. He uses the shield to defend himself, shouting, "Shield attack." The creature takes the hit in the chest. The protagonist thinks to himself that if he plays it right, he might copy the creature's skills. He smiles confidently, saying he might be lucky. Jun-hyuk says he just needs to pass the test for now, dodging the creature's attack. He thinks that even someone powerful would need extraordinary senses to do what he's doing. While dodging the attack, the protagonist notes that the average hunting time is 4 hours, and that his results exceed the previous ones. He fears that results that are too good might raise the association's suspicions. Jun-hyuk is practicing using precise and effective movements to defend himself. He thinks to himself that if he keeps this up long enough without overexerting, no one will suspect a thing. This time, using his shield, he reasons that if he fills the time without much effort, no one will be suspicious. He continues his defensive practice for 3 uninterrupted hours, using the shield to block imaginary strikes. The man in the lab coat comments that he's maintained the same defensive movements for 3 straight hours. Intrigued, he wonders if he should keep watching Jun-hyuk as he seems confident and secretive. He suspects the judges have probably already noticed something. The judge is surprised by the reactions of the other judges observing Jun-hyuk. He comments on how they're witnessing the emergence of an exceptional talent, an amateur with great potential. The woman observes that Jun-hyuk only reacts perfectly when there's an opening and immediately returns to position, maintaining calm behavior. The other judge remarks that the most surprising thing is how Jun-hyuk can perform complex defenses with minimal movement non-stop for 3 hours. The woman interrupts her observation to go to the restroom, apologizing and saying she'll be right back. The judge complains he ate too much at breakfast and needs to use the bathroom too. Meanwhile, the judge with glasses notes that another person is very clever, comparing them to a rat. He states that continuing the test doesn't make much sense. The lab coat guy expresses surprise at what was said. On the phone, the man in the green tie says he'll step out for a moment. The woman in red calls someone, saying it's about the tank test and its maximum potential. The person on the phone says Jun-hyuk is incredible. He asks what exactly is meant by incredible, and the caller reminds him that textile movements are the hardest ones. Another man on the line says someone is absolutely perfect. He says, in his opinion, something is correct, while Jun-hyuk pushes a large stone block with his shield. And he's planning an action with other guilds, but says if they're not the first to act, they need to stop the others from moving. He says they need to ensure no one else makes a move. A woman hands a registration card to a man. She congratulates him on the great work and gives him his registration certificate. The man looks at the card he received. The woman says it's impressive that he got a C rank on his first awakening. He asks why a C rank, and if there's a problem with that. She explains that it's rare to get a C rank on the first awakening, and that usually is between E and D ranks. He wonders why he got a C rank since he only fought trying to conserve as much energy as possible. The protagonist says anyway his awakening registration is now complete. Jun-hyuk thinks about living a peaceful life with his younger siblings. He just wants to do good things. A girl declares her love for Jun-hyuk, calling him Appa-yano. He responds with a surprised hum. He tells his sister, Jae-yun, how beautiful she is and that he loves her. He comments that the hunters returning from the mission in Thailand are arriving. 3 people, including a woman, appear to be waiting. Kang Jae-yun ranked as the second best domestic negotiator and sorceress. Kim Yeon-ho ranked as the best domestic hunter, and Lee Da-soo ranked as the best domestic tank. Jun-hyuk observes Lee Da-soo and comments on his serious and intimidating expression. He worries that he may have irritated Lee Da-soo and wonders if something bad will happen. He's concerned about Da-soo's reputation for being moody, and he decides to move forward regardless of whether his decision succeeds or fails. He's surrounded by them, a question mark practically hovering over his head. Jun-hyuk expresses his admiration, saying he's a fan. A nervous smile accompanies his words. He reinforces his admiration, emphasizing how honored he is to meet them. He seems a bit shy and embarrassed. The woman suggests that Jun-hyuk should autograph something for her, but Jun-hyuk tries to correct the misunderstanding, saying that's not what he meant. He reveals that he's a fan of Lee Da-soo, not of Jun-hyuk. The man in the red shirt asks what Jun-hyuk said. He wonders if he said something wrong. The man in red asks again what Jun-hyuk said, showing irritation and impatience. Jun-hyuk remains silent, clearly shaken and unsure of what to say in response. Lee Da-soo asks the protagonist about his serious expression, wondering what's with that face. He comments that the man's appearance makes him look like a high-level villain. Jun-hyuk asks if the man in red is trying to pick a fight with him, but Lee Da-soo asks the other man what he just said. The protagonist says he's a fan of Lee Da-soo. The man comments on what just happened, asking if the others heard. The blonde guy and a woman laugh, with the woman saying they're almost there. The protagonist responds with a confused huh. Kang Jae-yun complains about a monkey that appeared, but also says she has fans. 30 minutes earlier in the car, the woman reacts with disbelief, questioning the information. She recounts an incident where Da-soo kicked someone out for saying they were a fan, finding them annoying. She says she's never seen anyone claim to be a fan of Da-soo before, showing disbelief. Kang Jae-yun doubts the story, saying she doesn't believe she's ever seen someone like that before, indicating skepticism about the the earlier claim, and she says she doesn't like men who lie. The man introduces himself as Lee Dasu, the best tanker in the country, questioning the woman's belief that he wouldn't have any fans. She says that if at least one person shows up as a Dasu fan before they get to the association, she'll take him to a romantic dinner alone. The man is surprised and excited by the proposal and says he needs the woman's help if no fans show up. He asks what kind of help she means, seem a bit unsure. Kang Jae-yeon explains that they're going to hunt a high-level monster and need a strong tanker because the current group is lacking in that role. She explains the bet. If they lose, Daesu will have to act as the main tanker for the group just once. He expresses surprise, saying that something is for free. Then he smiles widely, looking pleased. The woman crosses her arms and stares with a challenging expression. Lee Daesu strongly asks if the protagonist is his fan, repeating the question for confirmation. He seems stunned, wondering if the situation is crazy and if he should run away, and says he was going to sign something for the fan but doesn't have a pen, so he offers a handshake instead. Jun-hyuk looks confused and wonders what kind of situation this is. He says cool after the handshake, and the other guy replies copied after the handshake. The strong man asks the protagonist's name, and he replies that his name is Kim Jun-hyuk. The man offers his card to the other, saying he can help him if he ever needs anything. The other man thanks him. The blonde asks the other's name, confirming if it's Jun-hyuk. Then the protagonist responds with a simple yes. The man introduces himself as Kim Yun-ho, and the other says he knows who he is. Jun-hyuk tells the other to hand over a copy, finding it amazing. The other asks what's so amazing. The blonde remarks that he never expected to see a national treasure in a place like that. But Lee Dasu questions the other for calling his fan a national treasure, and the other says he's not exactly wrong. He tells everyone to stop chatting and move quickly, because the association president is waiting. Two men leave while the protagonist just watches. Kang Jae-yeon says she feels uneasy. The protagonist approaches Kang Jae-yeon and compliments her, asking for an autograph. He considers the encounter a great honor. She walks away after the brief meeting. Jun-hyuk notes that the woman's personality seems strange considering what had happened earlier. He decides to leave, commenting that the situation turned awkward. But he reflects on what happened, considering it more than just a stroke of luck. The scene shifts to New York, showing the headquarters of the American Awakeners Association. Two men in an office are analyzing something on a computer, one of them questioning what they are seeing. He expresses astonishment, questioning how fast an event occurred, and mentions the name Kim Jun-hyuk. One of them asks Kim Jun-hyuk's nationality, and the other replies that he is from Korea. He's on the phone, suspecting manipulation in the information coming from Korea. Paul and Kevin discuss whether they are being monitored while Paul continues the investigation. Kevin asks what could possibly be manipulated. Kevin asks the blonde man to wait, who then asks why. He argues that it's too early to report to their superiors, suggesting further investigation, and asks how many S-rank awakeners exist in the world. Paul explains there are only 5, all of whom started as C-rank and gained special attention because of it. The other man thinks silently. Paul is worried about losing an S-rank talent if they miss the right moment. He informs the director that he found a C-rank awakener in Korea. Kevin is surprised to hear that it's actually an S-rank coming from Korea. They comment on the need for confirmation, but they're impressed by the results. The screen shows an individual on a computer monitor. Jun-hyuk shows a damaged shield and tells another person to take a look. A sunny city is shown. He returns through a portal. The protagonist comments that something is as expected, well deserved. He examines a screen showing information and says that defense and damage reduction were significantly improved. The system displays the stats of a passive skill: increased defense, evasion, and health, and reduced damage taken. An image of ancient ruins is shown. A man comments that shield-based skills deal considerable damage and can also stun while facing a monster. He uses a shield to stun a creature and remarks that in moments of crisis it would be a powerful trump card. The image displays the stats of an active stun skill using a shield. The man yells the name Kim Yun-ho and urgently commands him to act immediately. The blonde explains that Kim Yun-ho's unique skills don't increase his attack power, but something else is coming. A detailed description appears of a passive skill called Speed Master, showing massive boosts in movement speed, attack, reaction time, visual acuity, accuracy, evasion, and damage reduction. He remarks that the flash skill is incredible luck, a masterstroke. He jumps behind the monster. After teleporting, the first attack is guaranteed to be a critical hit, greatly increasing the chance of success. The gigantic red monster is wounded by an extremely powerful attack. The system describes the active skill called Flash, which allows movement faster than light, teleportation, and guarantees a critical strike on the next attack. We return to Jun-hyuk's point of view. He comments with satisfaction that something is a great stroke of luck, jackpot. He's thinking about combining skills copied from others with his own powers, a power amplifier, and a force weapon, to defeat monsters. He believes that with his new abilities, he'll be able to face a starting zone monster alone. A simple and organized kitchen is shown. He is silent, thoughtful, and possibly worried. He's observing something on the fridge. He picked up the food and realized it was cold. Jun-hyuk observes something. He had bought dinner and is wondering why his sister is late. The sister arrives late and explains she had something to do. He asks if she ate anything today, showing concern. The girl says she thought it would be better if they ate together. She seems regretful. The boy scolds her for not eating first as he gets asked. She replies that she didn't want to eat. He asks why. The girl explains that she dreamed he would die and was desperate because he wasn't answering his phone. She says she couldn't get in touch and was very scared. Jun-hyuk says she was being foolish and asks who was supposed to die. Their other brother enters the room, calling the boy by his nickname, Hyun. The boy asks why they were late since they were all waiting. The older brother says he should have been more considerate and feels guilty. Then the protagonist invites his brother to eat chicken together. He's the eldest and feels guilty for always being busy. He tells his family that his return isn't only due to family reasons. An image shows a city street at night. Two children sleep together in a bed. Meanwhile, Jun-hyuk takes photos of boxes. 4 cards are shown. He says he already has the photo ready. He plans to register a product and wait for a buyer. The focus is on selling something online. He considers 2 cards too precious to simply sell, expressing hesitation about selling specific items. Jun-hyuk reads a card and discovers it has the ability to split mountains. The emphasis is on the power described on the card. The acquisition of the skill fails because the user's class does not match the type of skill. The system explains why the skill wasn't acquired. He tries to copy something, but fails. The system informs that the target cannot be copied. He comments that he can't copy it and has no options left. An exclusive core is created for original system users. He feels a headache and the system informs him that a functional core was generated. The system reports that new functions have been unlocked, including a new skill and access to new windows. He is startled by a sound and realizes it's due to the creation of the core. He shows surprise and confusion. A message on the screen shows core creation progress, 1%. He questions what core creation is and states he's never heard of it before. He decides to wait for the process to end to find out what it's about. He is shocked, hands in his hair, murmuring something inaudible. Jun-hyuk feels an immense, unexplainable power taking over his body. His hand glows with radiant energy. He compares this feeling of power to something he felt before when he awakened, likely a reference to his awakening of powers. He decides to investigate this sudden wave of energy. He wants to find out what is happening. The city is in ruins with destroyed buildings and a car speeding through the scene. He requests access to information and is prompted to provide a keyword. The keyword is original system. The response explains that it's divided into 2, master of creation and copy master. He searches for information on master and secondary systems, and the response explains the master system as the origin of systems across multiple dimensions. The secondary system, unlike the master, is a system that requires a user. It needs someone to function. He searches for information using the keyword copy master. The system explains that the copy master can replicate abilities derived from the power of creation and recombine copied skills to create new ones. Jun-hyuk appears surprised and incredulous when reading that the system copies all life forms affected by derived systems, and he questions whether that truly includes all life forms. He asks if he can copy abilities not only from humans but also from monsters, and seems intrigued by the possibility. Then he says he has arrived at his destination, showing relief. He comments that the system's information access function is incredibly useful, while drinking from a bottle of water. He is amazed to discover that the system's core has unlocked a new function. Jun-hyuk shouts to open the system's status window. The status window displays information about the character, name, age, profession, system, and various attributes such as strength, endurance, and attack power, with numbers and enhancements. The protagonist realizes that not only his abilities but also his status window has changed. There is a clear visible alteration. He becomes excited upon noticing a significant increase in his attributes thanks to a bracelet called the Twilight Bracelet. Jun-hyuk talks about the next main option, which seems to be a core upgrade, showing increases in experience points, recharge points, and skill efficiency. He ponders about the recharge points, wondering if that means he can use extra power after exhausting his base level. He believes that combined with the bracelet's options, this will result in incredible efficiency. Surprised, he comments that all statistics are still at level 1 despite the boosts. He reasons that the stats will probably increase as he levels up, and there's a chance new options will appear. Jun-hyuk appears intrigued, expressing it with a question mark. He runs quickly to see the city, and finds what he was looking for. A monstrous, reptilian-looking creature appears. He activates an ability called Mapping, displaying a holographic map of the city. He observes a deserted city on the monitor, concluding it's the perfect place to test something, since no one is around. The huge and menacing monster appears, partially visible with an expression of rage. Jun-hyuk walks alone in an empty parking lot, unaware of the approaching danger. The creature gets closer, revealing a strange and terrifying appearance, with an expression indicating aggression. He shouts "Force Weapon," revealing a special power. The system displays a list of weapons on the screen, giving the reader the option to choose which type of weapon to use. A monstrous creature appears with its mouth open, ready to attack. It approaches the protagonist, who finds himself in imminent danger. Jun-hyuk is determined to summon his weapon, a longbow. He summons a magical longbow charged with energy. Jun-hyuk thinks to himself about the strength of a certain Park Kang-ho, saying that now he understands why he was so powerful. The monstrous green, muscular creature runs toward him. Jun-hyuk fires a turquoise energy attack. The monster creature creature takes the hit and appears to be in pain. The protagonist shouts that he's using rapid fire, critical shot, while firing multiple blasts of turquoise energy. He thinks that the other guy not only maxed out his core, but also all of his other abilities. The creature receives an intense turquoise energy attack, flashes appearing in its eyes. Junhyuk shouts to use a force weapon while delivering a slash of turquoise energy. He yells to switch to the long sword as a long turquoise sword forms and he runs. He concludes that he has completely inherited the abilities of Park Kang-ho. Junhyuk flies, wielding the energy bow, attacking a large dark creature. He thinks to himself whether he can become as strong as him, feeling determined to reach a similar power level. The protagonist battles a monstrous creature, which is defeated but still clearly tired and injured yet resistant. He pants, visibly exhausted from the effort of the fight. Hey everyone, did you enjoy this story? I really liked it. If you want to follow the next part, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like.